we want to hear from President Bola Ahmed Tinubu with regards to this protest. We want to hear from the governors. We want a live feed. We want to hear live reports. We want to give us live broadcast with regards to this protest, and not hearing from advisors or handlers. Do you agree?
Sure, 100%. I agree with that notion that we must hear from our elected officials, and I place emphasis on elected officials. We don't need to hear from appointees.
Appointed.
They don't have our mandate. But the president or the governor, you can't fire them. It's only the people that can fire them.
But don't you think whatever they're saying is what they're actually re-echoing what their principal is saying?
You have seen instances where they came out and they talk nonsense. Because anytime they open their mouth, they are all talking rubbish. And somebody else will have to go behind to go and start correcting what they're saying. These are overzealous people. Sycophants. Who want to government to see that their principals to see that they are working, even when they are doing more damage to their principals.
Let's begin this conversation taking a quote from Desmond Tutu, who is a South African bishop and theologian, once said, "If you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. If an elephant has its foot on the tail of a mouse and you say that they are neutral, the mouse will not appreciate your neutrality." Okay, my next quote will be from William Faulkner, who is an American writer, and he once said, "Never be afraid to raise your voice for honesty and truth and compassion against injustice and lying and greed. If people all over the world would do this, it will change the earth." All right, my last one will be from Buckminster Fuller, who is an American architect. He once said, "You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete." All right, let's see how this goes to little what we'll be discussing tonight. Very warm greetings and welcome to the conversation. We're reaching you from KAFTAN's television studio here in the nation's capital, Abuja. I am Annabel Orji. Hashtag End Bad Governance in Nigeria is still trending, and we just have few hours to go. Will that protest hold? Did it hold or not? Some other persons will say it is a protest for poor taste, and while some persons are even protesting against the protest, some people will say that's kingdom against kingdom. But then, will the protest hold or not? Even though the IGP has come out, has bowed to pressure and said that the protest is allowed, but everyone must go back home by 4 p.m. on that August 1st. My guest on the show today is Bishop Johnson, U.S. Army retired, military and army and security strategist, and we will be discussing the hashtag End Bad Governance in Nigeria 2024. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Great to have you. All right, let's first of all start with the hashtag End Bad Governance in Nigeria. Some other persons are saying hashtag End Tinubu's government. So some other persons, it is hashtag End Fuel Subsidy. So many people calling for different things. The placards are really full at the moment. So I would ask you personally, before we go ahead, are you for or against the protest? And which placard are you carrying, Bishop Johnson, if you are for it?
I am not for, neither am I against.
Oh, okay. Are you sitting on the fence? You're sitting on the fence.
No, I'm not sitting on the fence. I must not be for or against. In fact, I may even be, not even attuned to whatever is going on in the country right now. I'm here talking because you invited me as your guest. However, I do believe that the Constitution has made provisions for various rights of citizens. And one of those rights is the right to freely assemble and freely express themselves. And so if we are practicing a constitutional democracy, I think the onus is on us to allow citizens to express, those rights that we have, sincerely entrenched in our constitution. I don't think such rights should be suppressed.
Okay. All right. So you are neither for nor against the protest.
No.
So do you think the protest should hold?
If there are people who want to protest, they should protest. And government should allow them to protest.
Okay, so I hear some people say that why do you have the president? It looks as though the president is saying one thing and then the presidency is saying another thing. The president is urging and pleading with Nigerians to let's dialogue. Okay, so you asked for the minimum wage. We already signed that bill into law. You asked for, you said there's food is expensive in the market. We've already sent you a 50 kg bag of rice. Go buy it for 40,000 naira. Only God knows where the market is going to be, because we can't wait to even buy one bag of rice at 40,000. And then he also says that you're talking about the crude oil theft and Dangote refinery. Now we have asked that NNPC sell crude oil to Dangote refinery and other refineries in naira. So and even talking about the student loan that's still underway. So according to the federal government or the president, they say we are working. So it means that there's no need for you to protest. Even though the presidency coming out to say that you have no right to protest, you should not protest and all of that. But it looks like they've even bowed to pressure. Now they say, okay, go and protest. But why do you think that you have this statement coming from the president and that there's a counter statement coming from the presidency in this regard?
Well, first and foremost, I don't know the difference between president and presidency. I don't know if you're talking about officials that work with the president. Are they the part of the presidency? Because I think that the president is also presidency.
Right, it should be.
Right. Look, I don't know why this whole thing has gotten to the level that it has gotten to today. This is a very simple matter.
Is it a simple matter?
Very, very
Bishop
simple.
Johnson? How?
The
Why do you say
people
so?
are not protesting against President Tinubu per se or his administration. The people are protesting against failed policies that started about 2 decades ago, from 1999 to date. That's what they're protesting against. Failed policies of 16 years of PDP administration, failed policies of 8 years of Muhammadu Buhari administration, and failed policies so far, because the current administration has only been in office for 1 year, and so their own policy has not taken root. However, it's not giving the people the dividends that they want. Now, by going out there and taking responsibility, you are also taking responsibility for all the bad policies that were made in the past.
So unfortunately, it's happening in your own administration.
Exactly. Unfortunately,
not against you.
Not necessarily against the president, because I don't think the Nigerians are expecting that the current administration should do magic overnight. Came in May 29, 2023. And then by June 2024, we'll be singing Kumbaya. It doesn't work like that. It takes time. But by coming out and talking about these things, they are giving the protests undue attention and unnecessary publicity.
What are you referring to?
I'm talking about even Mr. President himself. You've seen DSS come out, police is saying, send us names of the people who are doing the protest. Which other democracy have you seen that when people want to protest, they are discussing it in parliament? House of Commons is talking about it. US Congress is debating about it. No. To me, I feel like the APC themselves are even the ones who want this protest to succeed. Because,
really?
Yes, as they keep talking about this protest, as they continue to talk about this protest, they are giving publicity and undue attention to the protest. The president has the loudest and largest megaphone in this country. Any subject matter Mr. President puts his mouth on, that subject matter will blow up the next day. So the best way for government to deal with this thing is not to talk. You can plan whatever you want to plan, do whatever you want to do it quietly, but stop talking about it. As you're talking about it, you're promoting it.
It gains momentum.
It gains momentum. And whether you like it or not, the protests will take place. I've had some government officials say, look, there is no space for you to do the protests in Abuja. For me, that is a dumbass statement. I will rather want these protesters to stay in a confined space like that Ego Square than saying, look, oh, I won't grant you access to Ego Square or any other stadium across the country, and then these people will now throw themselves into the street in an uncontrolled environment. How do you manage it?
So that's now where you have the violence and looting and all. When
That is where the thing that you are avoiding is now eventually going to take place. It's because now they are all over the place. They can't be controlled. Allow them, let them go into the stadium, let them go into Ego Square and confine themselves to that place and talk. And if I am a member of those government officials, you read my article, I will come and join them. All of us will protest together. We will sing, we will dance. At the end of the day, I will address the protesters. I will say, look, I have seen you. I've heard your voices. But let me tell you how we got to where we are today. And then you give them history of where Nigeria started and the policies, the failed policies of the past, and now your own policies and what you're trying to achieve. And you recognize the fact and take responsibility, although my policies are not yet working, but here you are and here I am. Let's go and discuss together and let's see how we can make my policies work. But saying, okay, you must tell us the names of all the people that are going to protest. How would they know all the names of all the people that want to go and protest? You just ask me now if I'm going to protest, assuming that I'm joining them in the protest. How would the organizers know that I'm coming out to give them so that they will know that I'm coming to protest? Now the organizers are responding to the police. Okay, you tell us the names of every policeman that is coming there to come and protect us. It makes this whole thing, it makes nonsensical of this whole thing. It's a very simple thing. The people want to go and ventilate their frustration. Allow them, let them go and ventilate their frustration. Okay. Your responsibility as government and as security people or law enforcement is to ensure that, look, the protest is peaceful. There is no loss of life and there is no damage to property. If the protesters cannot do that, then you have the legitimate right to say, look, this thing has gotten out of control, therefore it must end. But you can't say that they should not protest because you have given them the right to protest, to assemble and express themselves in the first place. So you should also respect that obligation of the Constitution by allowing them to exercise their rights.
I'm going to ask you a double-edged question. I'd like you to unbundle them in one breath. One, with regards to what you stated when you talked about the fact that, okay, even if you were these officials, I would even join them to protest.
Yes.
I told someone about it. I said, oh, so that's now see finish. So you now join us. We are protesting that what you are doing is not good. And then you now join us and start screaming, we no go gree or Victoria Asata, Aluta Continua. Okay, so are you categorically now stating that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu should lead the protest? Yes. The IGP should lead the protest. Senator Godswill Akpabio should lead the protest. Is that what you're saying?
They should all be part of the protest because the protest is not about them. It's not against them. It's not about them. It's about Nigeria. And like I stated earlier, they are only 1 year old in government. So all the things that we are suffering today did not begin on May 29, 2023. They started way back.
But then some other persons will say it started from fuel subsidy is gone.
Why did we remove fuel subsidy in the first place? That is the question. During the campaign, all the candidates of the major political parties were on consensus that the fuel subsidy should be removed. Right? Because there was so much corruption in that fuel subsidy regime. People were milking Nigerians. Even we were subsidizing fuel for our neighboring countries. We'll give them money to go and buy fuel. They will carry the product and they'll go to Niger and Chad and sell it. Did it start on May 29th? That is the reason why the fuel subsidy was removed. Now we can debate why didn't we wait a little longer? Maybe fix our refineries. Because look, that fuel subsidy was not sustainable. In fact, the number of PMS that they say we consume on daily basis were all fabricated nonsense because we don't consume that amount of PMS on daily basis. It's because they are carrying this product and they're taking them outside the country and selling to our neighboring countries and making outrageous profits. That's why it seemed like we were consuming that much PMS, but we are not. So it's not something that started a year ago. The problems of Nigeria has been there, before May 29, 2023. So, but if the people, we can have the debate on whether it should have been removed in the manner and where it was removed? Or should we have waited and make sure that our refineries are fully operational before we remove it?
Isn't that one and the same, 6.5 dozen?
Those are legitimate questions. Those are questions that we can ask, and those are the questions that we can talk about and dialogue about. But it's not true that all of Nigeria's problems came overnight or they started yesterday. Let me tell you why this protest is still coming now. The reason why we are talking about protests today is because when the NSAS protests, came up, the government did not allow that protest to take its natural course. You should allow people to go out there and, ventilate themselves, their frustrations.
Did you say the government?
You understand? This protest you're seeing right now is that NSAS has metamorphosed into hashtag end bad governance, hashtag days of rage. It's that same protest because they didn't allow it to take its natural course.
Did you say it was the government that didn't allow it to take its natural course? The government
did not allow it to take its natural course. They did everything they could and they suppressed it. And the issues that were raised in that NSAS protest, we are still dealing with those issues to date. And so it kept accumulating underneath because that's what happens. What happens is that whenever there is a problem, instead of taking a holistic look at that problem and trying to address it in a very serious way, you suppress it. When you suppress that problem, what it does is that you have just kicked the can down the road, right? And the problem will be building underneath. Eventually, it will come back again. Now, if government fails to allow this particular protest to proceed and allow these people to ventilate their anger and their frustration, and they suppress it, we may not have that chance again where they will give government 2 weeks notice that they want to protest or 2 months notice that they want to protest. The thing will just eventually become a spontaneous something one day, and it will just explode in a way that will engulf this country and that the country cannot even control it again. So that's why I am saying, look, government, stop promoting the protest. Stop using your loud megaphone to promote the protest by talking about it. Just allow these people to go and ventilate themselves. But make sure that you take all the necessary steps to ensure that the protest is not hijacked by hoodlums and mischief makers. And if you're going to have pro-government protests or counter-protests, make sure they are separated. Let them be in different places and do their protests. Don't allow them to collide. There should be no violence at all of any kind, but allow them to protest.
So it's this coalition that always causes the violence.
Exactly. Because government now wants to suppress this what they perceive as anti-government protest, but I think it's anti-bad leadership protest, which is not particularly this particular administration, right? But because the government, this administration is in power, they've taken ownership of all the bad policies of the past as if they are all their own. So what I'm saying is, look, leave them to protest, but do what you need to do to ensure that the protest is peaceful and there's no violence. That way, we don't have to deal with this protest again tomorrow in a manner that it will be so explosive and we will not be able to control it.
All right, taking a cue from where you just landed, 2 questions again I'll ask you. Now, you talked about the fact that it is not a protest against President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and his team.
Yes.
It's been something that it's been a long time coming.
Of course.
Now, when you see trending hashtags as end bad governance in Nigeria or end Tinubu's government, isn't it referring to a particular person then?
Now, don't get me wrong. There are some, the original intention of this protest is not to have hashtag end the Tinubu government. You see, there are people there who have taken advantage of that opportunity to make it seem like it is against Tinubu. If you look at the demands of the protesters, they are even talking about restructuring. They're talking about redoing our constitution. You understand what I'm trying to say? This idea, it's been known to Nigerians before Tinubu came into office. Nigerians have been saying, look, this constitution is not our constitution. This is a constitution that was handed down to us. In fact, it was forced on us by the military. And the agitation to have a new constitution has been going on even before Tinubu became governor of a Lagos state. So if you go through their demands, you discover that these demands are not necessarily problems that were created by this current administration. There is going to be one or two persons who want to take advantage of the situation. It's those people that they need to identify, because they are not the original intenders of this particular agitation and protest. The people the original people who want to carry out these protests are not looking at any individual. They are looking at Nigeria as a whole, as a country. And they are comparing Nigeria with Nigeria peers, where we need to be by 2024, and why we are not where we are supposed to be, and why we have been left behind by countries like Malaysia that used to come here before to seek, advice and technical expertise, on how to deal with agriculture and the palm plantation and the allied agro value chain. And look at where they are now, and look at where we are today. Those are the people. Those are the original people who are organizing this.
You seem to be speaking as though you know some of the promoters. Are you going to give us names?
I don't know anybody at all, but I can tell you that going by I've seen their demands, and I've looked at their demands. The demands is not just the problems they're trying to address are not problems that started today. These are problems that have been there, for years and even decades.
It's actually good that sorry, I had the bone. It's actually good that you're saying that you've seen their demand, because I've had a plethora of guests who come out to say that we don't even know what they're demanding for. We've not seen their program. They are faceless. But now you say you've seen their demands.
Their demands are all over the same way they were advertised. How did we know they want to do protests? They use the social media to say, look, they want to do protests. And that's how everybody came to be aware that there's a planned protest. Is it not? They are also using the same social media to, promote their demands as well. Well, that's what we are seeing as their demands is not actually their demands. If that is the case, that means that even the advertisement that there's going to be protests is also not their own advertisement that there will be protests. So in that case, we don't have anything to worry about. But if we accept that the proposed protest is true, based on what we have seen on the social media, we should also accept the fact that, look, these are their demands. If you Google the demands, you will see them. I think it's about 16 of them or so, that I went through. And I look at all of them. They are not things that just happened.
Okay.
The fuel subsidy thing that we are even talking about had already been removed before Tinubu came into office. I'm not speaking for the government. I'm just being objective here. I don't like the way that Mr. President said it has been removed on day one from his inaugural speech. I thought that was a commando and a gangster way of doing things in government. I thought that he ought to have, let situation be how it was. Assemble his cabinet, sit down and analyze what are going to be the fallouts of making such an announcement, and try to put, mitigating measures in place with his cabinet. I don't think it should have been removed in that form. Nevertheless, it has been done, right? There was no budget for fuel subsidy when Tinubu came into office. You know that when you come into office, it's not your budget that you normally work on. It's usually the budget of the outgoing government that you operate, unless you do supplementary budget, right? From the previous budget that was put in place by the outgoing administration of Muhammadu Buhari, they did not budget for fuel subsidy. Subsidy, you have to pay for it. You see, it's not free. There is no subsidy that is free. It's just who will pay for it, who pays for it. Somebody must pay for it. There is no free lunch anywhere in the world. Somebody, somewhere has to pay for it.
So with what is happening currently, the price that you buy a liter of fuel at the moment compared with the price of the naira to the dollar, is fuel subsidy really gone in reality? Bishop Johnson.
They made mistake, and I think they are coming back to address those mistakes. I am not speaking for the government by any imagination,
right?
But I'm being objective. I told you the manner and way the whole fuel subsidy thing was done is why we are where we are today.
No, that's what I'm asking you personally.
Right.
Do you think that with the amounts that we buy fuel, I called someone yesterday, she said she's at the filling station at 2 a.m. in the morning in Lagos, and that she bought that fuel for 800 naira, another person 900 naira, and then you look at the price of the naira to the dollar, over 1,600 naira in the black market, and these different prices you see in different windows. So would you actually say that in true spirit, fuel subsidy is gone?
Well, I am not an economist. I don't know what is the actual cost of if you allow, the market forces to take its course. I don't know where the pump price will land itself. But some analysts have come to say, look, government is still subsidizing it. That is why we are buying at 670 or 690 or whatever the case may be. Now, the cost is not going to be the same thing everywhere. Even when the product was being subsidized, people in the southeast were paying more. And even people in the south, that's the irony of the whole thing, where the crude oil comes from. We're even paying more than those who are here in Abuja. There are a lot of factors that will, I believe, drive this cost. Transportation and the availability of marketers and sometimes greed, right? Because we live in a society where nobody's, there is no price control. Nobody is monitoring the price of anything. You can just buy something today and you sell it to any amount you want to sell it, and nobody asks you any question about it. And so there are factors that drive the cost of all these things. So you're not going to have a uniform cost everywhere in Nigeria. Even in Abuja here, they don't have uniform price of PMS at every filling station. They vary, from place to place. So, but what I'm saying is, look, government should allow citizens to exercise their rights. Don't try to interfere or infringe on that right. Allow them to ventilate their grievances and their anger. Listen to them. Hear their complaints. In fact, in that protest self, you'll be able to conduct a lot of statistics, a lot of study. In my article, I said it. I gathered psychologists and sociologists and people in, human behavioral sciences, bring them together. You'll be looking at the demographic of people that are participating in this protest. What are their age brackets? What ethnicity? Which region is this protest more successful? Which state recorded the highest number of protesters? Which other states and regions did the protests fail woefully? Where did they succeed the most? You look at all these statistics, and from even the protests, you can identify 2, 3, 4, 5 people that you can call for dialogue. Forget the people who are promoting this thing. Most of them are not even in Nigeria as we speak. They are somewhere overseas where there is, they're enjoying themselves and they're throwing these things out. And the real people are the people who are here in Nigeria, who are operating these things. Those people who have stuck out their necks to ensure that the protest, is successful. Those are the people you need to identify and engage for dialogue.
All right. We're due for a break, but before we go on that break, because I hear you say, you talked about the fact that NSAS protest was because the government was didn't allow the baby to mature before they had to abruptly stop it. So I'm going to ask you, with what this hashtag end bad governance protest, and it looks as though, in fact, these days it looks as though everybody is just at the edge. Don't push me because I'm close to the edge already. And what's someone who is already on the floor fears no fall after all. So everyone looks like, because if you see what happened during a few days ago at MTN office, that was yesterday, during the NIN and SIM linkage, you have people who were already protesting, and then they started destroying things. So it looks as though Nigerians, we are already at the edge, so don't even force us to do more. Now, looking at what all that happened during the NSAS protest, even though you say that they stopped it abruptly, and then this one coming up, and then the government is saying don't protest, don't protest. So what do you think is going to happen? Is it going to still be that we are already at the edge? So what's the worst you can do?
Well, you see, my article, if you read it, the situation has already been mismanaged, because now these protesters are now seeing this situation as me against the government. They're looking at the thing now as a fight between them and against the government, because the government came out initially to begin to, say, look, don't protest, don't protest. You're protesting, this is a perilous time, you protest, this is blah, 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 blah. And so now by doing so, now they are seeing themselves as that government is opposed to them exercising their right and the freedom to assemble and express themselves. And that's what usually leads to those, confrontational situations that you're just talking about. But if somebody just sends out notice that they want to do protests and you ignore them and go behind the scene and quietly and put measures in place to ensure that the protest is peaceful, nobody will be quarreling. The NSAS protest was it not peaceful when it started? It started peacefully, but it got violent because there was effort by then government to try to stop it by force. And so the people resisted. And that's what usually what happens. If you look at the one in Kenya, I understand government apprehension. You see, government has to manage tension and crisis and panic. But the way to do that is not to create additional tension and panic. Now, we just came out of being in queues at filling stations over disruption in the supply chain. Now we are back to those queues again. Why? Because these people are closing. They say they don't want to sell again. They will shut down their filling stations because of fear that protest is going to erupt and the people will come and destroy their businesses and kill them. So there is uncertainty everywhere. And with that uncertainty, the protest has already even succeeded before it even began, because they have achieved certain level of success. And the reason why they were able to do that is because of the way government has been talking about this protest. As they talk, they are promoting the protest. They are giving the protest more traction. They are elevating the protest. All these things can be done. Measures can be. See, I've worked in an organization where we suppress protests without anybody knowing that we even did it. Because you don't have to come to the public and come open and say, don't do it. There are things they can do behind the scene. And this protest will be a total failure. I don't think they are aware of it. I don't think they know about it.
I recall speaking with a military friend, and then he said, oh, really, if the government actually knows, there are some ways that you can just do it, and before you know, the protest is all over. People are even fighting against themselves, and they're telling themselves, oh, we don't actually need to protest, instead of making it loud. All right, now, because you stated the fact that from Kenya and all of that, but I just wonder, what is this wave or this era of protests coming from Kenya? You go to Uganda, you go to Bangladesh, Nigeria. Is that what is causing this palpable fear?
There is suffering in the world. It's not just Nigeria. This inflation thing you're talking about, you've been following the US election, they're talking about inflation. That is Republican campaign against Joe Biden is inflation. You see, since after that pandemic, the COVID-19,
right,
the world has not fully recovered. And because of the disruption that was created by that pandemic, the economy of most countries suffered. And those countries are yet to recover from the aftermath of that pandemic. And so that's why you're seeing all those agitations across the globe. I am glad you mentioned some countries. So you see that it's not something that is unique to Nigeria. But there's a way Nigeria can manage its own. And their own will not be like that of the Kenyans. The reason why Kenyan protests became violent was because of arrogance of government. And we are seeing the same arrogance manifest itself here in Nigeria. Arrogance of government. As at the time that, you see, the Kenyan protest was in the media for weeks. Government was totally incompetent. They didn't do what they were supposed to do. And when the protest, maybe they probably would have said, don't mind those bastards and idiots. Stronger will not allow them to come out and protest. So when those hungry people eventually showed up, the authorities were caught flat-footed and not prepared to deal with the situation. And to make matter worse, the reason why that parliament was a target was because even as the protest was going on, the parliamentarians were there deliberating on how to pass that same bill that was causing the problem in Kenya, pass it into law. That was why they were targeted.
All right.
But the Nigerian National Assembly, to me, has taken the right step. I am hearing that they are supposed to come and have an emergency meeting on Wednesday. I think it's a bad idea.
Is it a bad idea?
Yeah, I think it's a bad idea. They are not, they've gone on recess.
Right.
Stay on recess. Don't come back to the parliament where you will become target. Stay all the places you are. In fact, they should be with their constituents talking to them. telling them why it's not necessary that they should participate. Engage them in town hall meetings. Try to tell them what your government is doing, and why they should be patient and allow some of those policies that have been put in place to take roots and begin to manifest.
All right, we need to go on a break, but I will kickstart from where you just landed. Let's go on a quick break, and when we return, we'll continue with this conversation as we get Bishop Johnson's landing thought on the hashtag End Bad Governance in Nigeria 2024 protest. See you again. Just joined us. This is the conversation reaching you from KAFTAN's television city here in the nation's capital, Abuja. If you just joined us, you've actually missed out on the first 35 minutes, but then you can still join us as we get Captain Bishop Johnson's landing thought on the hashtag End Bad Governance in Nigeria. All right, before we went on that break, we've actually touched on quite a number of things, but I will start from where you landed with when you talked about the fact that the National Assembly do not need an emergency plenary session. They should stay where they are. In fact, go to their constituents and start talking to them. But then you have some other persons who would say, we want to hear from President Bola Ahmed Tinubu with regards to this protest. We want to hear from the governors. We want a live feed. We want to hear live reports. We want to give us live broadcasts with regards to this protest, and not hearing from advisors or handlers. Do you agree?
Sure. 100%. I agree with that notion that we must hear from our elected officials, and I place emphasis on elected officials. We don't need to hear from appointees.
Appointed.
They don't have our mandate. Our mandate is with those who we elected into office, right? So those are the people. When the people protest, those are the people that they want to hear from. They want to pass the message to. Any of these appointees can be fired today or tomorrow, by the president or the governor. But the president or the governor, you can't fire them. It's only the people that can fire them.
But don't you think whatever they're saying is what they're actually re-echoing what their principal is saying?
You have seen instances where they came out and they talk nonsense. Because anytime they open their mouth, they are all talking rubbish. And somebody else will have to go behind to go and start correcting what they're saying. These are overzealous people, sycophants, who want government to see that their principals to see that they're working, even when they're doing more damage to their principals. We want to hear from elected officials, those that are occupied, that are holding our mandate, not some appointed people. We should hear from Mr. President. We should hear from the various governors. And if you read my article, I said, look, government can make this protest nonsensical by joining the protesters to protest. All of us will be singing and dancing and protesting. And thereafter...
And then you have netizens say, that's see finish. They don't see us finish.
I'm telling you, and right there and then, you address them. As I mentioned it in the part of this conversation, you address them. Give them rundown of where we started from and where we are today and where we want to be tomorrow and why they have to be patient. As the president is doing here in the nation's capital, the APC state governors in particular are doing it in their various state capitals. I don't think any of the opposition party governors will do it. After all, they are in competition to win election and take over each other's position. So they won't support anything that is going to help the government. But I think he's wrong. I think that it's not about the government. It's about the people. I think that they equally should do the same thing.
Okay.
And calm down the nerves, bring down the tempo, talk to the people. If you believe that you won the election, you must have won the election because you were popular. Therefore, at your various state levels, you should still be enjoying that popularity after 1 year. So you should be able to go out there and join your people and protest. But failed policies since 1999 to date. The same thing the president will be doing here in the FCT is the same thing the state governors should be doing in their various states.
All right.
Tell them where they started. Let them know who had been there before them, and how those policies did not help matters and what they're trying to do now to correct the mistakes of the past and create a pathway to a prosperous future. That is what needs to be happening.
I hear you say that you did not win the election because you were unpopular. A lot of people would actually disagree with that. So, but let's go down to talking about security at least. Even if the protest holds, how do we secure the lives and properties of Nigerians? CPPE has come out to say that over 400 billion naira will be lost daily, according to them. I don't know how they got their own figures, and daily if this protest holds. And then a lot of people would return back to all that happened during the NSAS protest when it was infiltrated upon, how businesses were shut down, how businesses were looted, warehouses were looted. And then most people are saying, if you have things inside your warehouse, please go and pack them out, because definitely that might be the first target. NYSC tell their corpers, please don't go out with your uniforms and just stay at home or stay wherever you are. And then it looks as though there's this palpable fear. The National Assembly is on a very long recess over 7 weeks, and I saw you go to Oyo State, the Oyo State Assembly is saying, oh, please, let's go on recess with this nationwide protest. Now there is that fear. It has already been created. And then the IGP decides again to bow to pressure and says, okay, you guys should protest, but we will protect you. But then we're seeing 30,000 NSCDC officials deployed. You have military, you have police. Are we in a war zone? Or it's all about protecting?
It's because, as I told you, the situation has already been mismanaged from the get-go by government and government officials as they continue to talk about this protest, using their largest and loudest megaphone to give the protest the traction that it is enjoying today. I hope that going forward, we will learn from it. Protest is not a bad thing. Protest is a way of people to pass a message. I mean, those governed to pass a message to those who are governing. If you want to hear directly from the people, the best way to hear directly from the people is through protest. I will not be surprised that the information that the president is being fed with as we speak is not the reality on ground. Because they build all these barricades around those in power. So they get disconnected with the reality on the ground because they don't intermingle with ordinary people to understand their frustrations and what they're going through. And so the only way, and ordinary people don't, like you now, you won't have access to your governor unless because you're a media person. And even as a media person, it's not everything that you're going to ask your governor. So the only way they can pass that message to those who are in government is through this protest. I don't think it's a bad thing. But what has made it look like it's bad is because of, the way we have handled the situation.
So is this damage control?
You see, what we have to do now is damage control so that the fallout will not be that much. You have government officials say, look, there is no space for you to go and protest. No space is available. You see, those kind of bombastic, bellicose, and the presumptuous rhetorics are the reasons why this tension and apprehension is existing in the country as we speak. If government officials can be measured in their approach and in their utterances, we won't be where we are today. So the onus now is on security agencies, and I know they should have already been doing that. They should be gathering intelligence behind the scene, for crying out loud. We are spending humongous amount of money in budget to, improve on their intelligence gathering capacity and the capabilities. So this is the time that huge budget we are giving them is being called to question. They should be able to use all the tools available at their disposal to ensure that the protest is not does not get out of control.
Okay.
But by trying to say no, you cannot protest. We want you to shut down by 4 o'clock. You must provide us the names of all the people that are protesting and blah 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 blah. You are exacerbating the situation.
Okay, so when you go to around Abuja, and then you see military officers, you see army, you see police, you see over 30,000 NSCDC across the whole nationwide. Should that give you fear or at least some sense of safety, even if the protest is going to happen?
Not at all. Not at all. It even helps to even elevate the tension. What they're trying to do is to demonstrate a show of force. What is called the intimidation by force. Usually when we were in the services, we used to do that. If you suspect an area where the enemies have a stronghold, we deploy in our Abraham tanks and Bradley assault vehicles in a show of force, intimidation, right? But most times they don't work because the enemy you want to intimidate is an entrenched one that is already prepared for you.
Like those who say the person who's on the ground fears no fall.
Of course. And that is the situation now. And the people are seeing all these massive military deployments, and it's making them angry and angrier and angrier again. That government is trying to infringe on their God-given right to assemble and express themselves. So I saw that convoy of military vehicles yesterday when I was coming out of my house, crossing. I say, what a nonsense, right? Let me tell you what the protesters owe the government. What the protesters owe the government is to, in all the states, wherever they believe this protest is going to take place, is to tell them the route they are going to follow if they're going to march from point A to point B, right? The venue, if they're going to stay in one place and do addresses and speeches and all that stuff, right? The date, the time, estimated number of protesters, not that you give them a vivid and accurate number because they don't know. And they sure don't know the details of the people who are going to protest.
Is it okay for them to stop at 4 p.m. or at a particular time?
Not at all. They should not stop at any point in time. They should stop whenever they want to stop, right? But government security must make sure that it's only when it becomes violent. If it becomes violent, then the government must move in and end it by force. But as long as they're protesting peacefully, they are not resorting to violence. And government does not go and bring another group to come and they do counter protests and then create chaos, right? Because that's what usually happens is when one group wants to protest. There's these several fault lines in Nigeria that has not allowed Nigeria to move forward.
Like it's a kingdom against kingdom.
Yes, we are Yorubas and these people are Hausas. You saw when they wanted to do the one when Buhari was in office, they say protest is haram. Now I am hearing other people reversing the whole thing again. If they don't go in that route, okay, this protest is against Yoruba administration, therefore you should not hold, and allow them to protest, right? They will get tired and they will eventually go home. But by then, the government would have, analyzed the demography of the people that showed up for this protest, like I said earlier, and where they showed up, and begin to maybe reverse some of the policies or, rejig some of those policies to address some of the complaints and some of the issues that are raised in those protests. Okay. Every protest there's a reason why people want to protest.
Okay, so let me take it from where you just landed with regards to the demands made. You talked about earlier, the fact that you've seen at least 16 of these demands. So some other persons will say that why not just make it 1 or 2 so that the government knows where they are targeted and then they give it a timeline. Why just make it a plethora of demands? Do you agree?
You see, when you go for negotiation, you must go from point of strength. They know that some of those demands are not achievable. And even if those that are going to be achieved are not going to be achieved overnight, they know that eventually for them to be successful, there must be negotiation between them and government. And so they gave out those long list of demands so that by the time the negotiation is over, maybe they will achieve 1 or 2 or 3 of them. And if they achieve 1 or 2 or 3 of those their demands, they have succeeded. But if you go with 1 demand or 2 demands and you go there and the government knocks off those 1 or 2 demands, then you're left with no other thing that you're asking for. That's why you always see them with those long lists of demands. And it happens in our law enforcement, right?
Even in NLC, that's why they started from 600,000 in the minimum wage.
Yes, so that you land, 70. You know your target, you know what you actually want, but you have to broaden the space so that at the end of the day, you land there, right? Even our law enforcement, they do that. Anytime they arrest you for one crime, the next thing you know, they have released this long list of charges against you because they know that when they go to court, by the time they go through the prosecution process and all that stuff, at the end of the day, 1 or 2 of those charges are going to stick. And if they stick, then they have succeeded. But if they go with one charge and they get to the court and the judge dismiss just that one charge, they have lost.
Okay. So now, do you think that buying a bag of rice for 40,000 instead of the normal 70,000, we're buying it for a few days, and then now paying workers 70,000, and also the Dangote's refinery can now buy fuel or crude in naira, or they have the loan to students and all of that? Is that actually at least a step in the right direction? Are we putting our best foot forward?
Sure. There are steps in the right direction, but because those things are not manifesting yet, right? You see, probably 50% of this inflation thing is being driven by transportation costs, right? And this transportation cost is based on this fuel subsidy issue. There is no economy in the world that does not have subsidy. None. Subsidy is a way of stabilizing economies. It's a stabilizing factor in most economies. If you go to US, most the agricultural sector is very much subsidized because you must keep the cost of food down, because that is the basic thing. People must eat. You must keep it down. So subsidy is a necessity. It must be in place. But I understand why this fuel subsidy thing has been a problem in Nigeria because of our corrupt nature. The thing blew up the budget of subsidizing the PMS. And like I told you, somebody must pay for it. That something is being subsidized does not mean that it's free. It's either the consumers are paying for it or the government is paying for it, right? The reason why you see government and ASU at loggerheads all the time is because government said it is subsidizing cost of education, especially in federal institutions in Nigeria, but it's not paying for it. I don't know if you understand what I'm trying to say, because school fees has to be allowed. You see, what they do in the US, with their education is that they allow school fees and all that to be driven by market forces, right? In those institutions. And the government will now come down on the part of the consumers. And that's what the Federal Ministry of Education in the US does. They give students grants and loans to be able to offset that high cost of education. Because it must be paid. Unless you don't want to have the quality of education that you're looking for.
All right.
It's only when you don't have the quality of education is when you say, okay, I'm subsidizing this, but I'm not going to pay for it. And so there won't be enough money for people to be able to invest in research and development and all those things that will make those institutions to grow and therefore help the country to grow. And so that is what is happening in this instance.
All right.
Subsidy is not a bad thing, but it's because of the corruption that we have seen in that fuel subsidy regime. But there are measures that government can take to mitigate the impact. So if we are able to find a way to reduce the cost of transportation, which by the way affects the cost of food, and we're able to deal with insecurity in Nigeria, because most farmers are not farming as they should because of insecurity in those areas. The criminals and the terrorists and bandits, they know that if they stop people from going to farm, there will be food scarcity, and they would have dealt a blow to the government when there is food scarcity. So they're targeting it. So you have cost of transportation, you have inability of farmers to go to farm, and the country not being able to produce up to produce in its maximum capacity. And then you have unscrupulous elements, in Nigeria who have capitalized on the situation in the country and are now, raising the cost of everything because nobody is nobody's checkmating them. There's supposed to be some kind of price control that is put in place. Even though
you have DPR, you have SON, Standard Organization of Nigeria, you have NAFDAC, you have FCCPC.
But they're not. Anybody, you can sell anything you want. Anything you want. Somebody can sell whatever they have, whatever. That's not how it works. There must be limits. There must be a ceiling at which anything can be sold.
All right. So I hear some other persons, even as we begin to round off, I hear some other persons say that we are not. In fact, it was almost becoming like as a caricature. I hear some Igbo people in Lagos. They were making jest of the protests. I don't know if they were making jest of the protests or they were making jest of some people. They say, no, we're not going to protest. We want this government to continue. In fact, in the next 8 years, we continue with this government and all. But then you have some other persons who will say we are not protesting, we are not doing #EndSARS protest. Our own protest is #release Nnamdi Kanu. Is it now a kingdom against kingdom, or are we still fighting the same cause?
Well, Nigeria has always been kingdom against kingdom, which has been our greatest undoing. Is that I mentioned it earlier, the various fault lines in Nigeria. Everything in Nigeria is seen from the prism of ethnicity and religion, right? When EndSARS started, they not saw it as a protest against one of their own, the then former president, Muhammad Buhari. And so they said protest is haram, right? Protest is forbidden. So now this particular protest now is being looked also from that prism of tribe. Okay, it's protest against our own person. So there is that allegiance to tribe and religion in Nigeria more than there is to Nigeria itself. And so you're going to hear all of those, divisive and presumptuous, rhetorics that have been thrown, up and down.
All right.
And Ohadeze came out and said Igbos should not join, and the reason why is because of previous experiences where, they didn't start the protests, they joined, and then all of a sudden the protest now turns against them. They now become the bad people and become victims of that
at the
protest.
receptive end.
Exactly, became the ones at the receiving end. So that's why they are asking them to be cautious this time around. But ordinarily, it's supposed to be a protest by all Nigerians. Those who want to protest. Everybody must not be part of it. But if you feel that there's a reason for it to be part of it, nobody should suppress, that desire for you to go there and express, yourself and ventilate.
I quite agree with you. I saw a video of FCE, that's Federal College of Education, Akoka in Lagos yesterday, where they were vandalizing vehicles, and then they said they've started their own protest. In Niger State, they started their own protest and all. But in 30 seconds, I need you to look at the eye of every Nigerian, or the Nigerian looking at you, watching you right now, and tell them, even if you have to protest, please do it violently. Resist violence rather, and make it peaceful, because where your right starts, other person's right stops. Good. And vice versa.
You see, that is the key. I am speaking to Nigerians now, and I am saying, look, yes, it is your constitutional right to exercise, that freedom of assembly and freedom of expression, but do it in a peaceful way. There's absolutely no reason for anybody to lose their life because they're protesting. As you're protesting is your right. It's also the right of the other person who is not interested in protesting to be alive and be able to go about their own businesses without anybody stopping them from doing so. That's why I have said that instead of allowing these protests to take place in the streets, they should be restricted to some locations so that others who are not involved in the protests should still be able to go about their normal businesses. That people are not didn't join you in the protest does not mean that they are against you. There may be one or two reasons why they are not protesting. And that they are not protesting with you this time around does not mean that tomorrow they will not have their own protests. And in that protest, you may have one or two things, or one reason or the other, why you will not be part of them.
Right.
So we should have that mutual trust and mutual respect for each other. And the bottom line is that the protest, if it ever happens, should be peaceful. There should be no destruction of property, and nobody should lose their life.
Thank you so much. That's a very fine way to anchor this program. Captain Bishop Johnson, U.S. Army retired military and security strategist. It is always a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you for having me.
Right. All right. I'm sure you must have been rightly educated, entertained, and informed. If the protest would take place, please ensure that it is peaceful. If the person beside you is trying to cause a mayhem or violence, please report such person and stay away from violence. From me and everyone here at KAFTAN Television, we say shun violence, say no to violent protests. See you again next time. My name is Annabel Orji. God bless you and yours, and God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Good evening and stay safe.